Korean
my
billionaire
goodness.
cancels his wedding to save
I
black
am
ex-wife raising
speechless.
his secret son
He
hook.
looks just like you.
The hospital
He
room
has your
smelled of
nose, though.
antiseptic and regret. Min-Jun Park stood frozen in his $1,000 suit, staring at the woman he'd spent 2 years trying to forget, holding a toddler whose eyes were an exact mirror of his own. Min-Jun had always believed that wealth could insulate him from chaos. His life operated on calendars synchronized across 3 continents, meetings scheduled to the minute, and a wedding planned with the precision of a military operation. 28 days until he would marry Seo-Yun Choi in what Seoul's society pages were already calling the merger of the century. He didn't love her. But love, his grandmother had reminded him repeatedly, was a luxury their family couldn't afford twice. Atlanta's Piedmont Hospital wasn't on his itinerary. The acquisition meeting had run late, and his assistant had mentioned something about routing through the medical center's attached research facility for a potential biotech investment. Min-Jun had been reviewing projected quarterly earnings on his tablet, barely registering the sterile corridors and the antiseptic smell that seemed to follow him like a ghost. Then he'd heard it. A laugh. Her laugh. The sound had stopped him mid-stride, his Italian leather shoes squeaking against the polished floor. It was impossible. Camila was in Seoul. No, she'd left Seoul. She was, somewhere. Anywhere but here. But there she was, 20 feet away, her back to him, her natural curls pulled into a messy bun, wearing jeans and a worn sweater that had seen better days. She was cradling something, someone, against her chest, swaying slightly in that universal rhythm of exhausted mothers everywhere. Min-Jun's heart performed an acrobatic feat his body couldn't replicate, launching itself into his throat and plummeting to his stomach simultaneously. Mrs. Johnson. A nurse appeared, clipboard in hand. Kai's oxygen levels are stabilizing. The doctor will be in shortly to discuss the treatment plan. Camila's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. As she turned, Min-Jun saw the child properly for the first time. The boy, Kai, the nurse had called him, couldn't have been more than 2 years old. His skin was a beautiful blend of warm brown tones, his hair a mass of soft curls. But it was his face that made Min-Jun's world tilt dangerously off its axis. The boy had his nose. His chin. The exact shape of his eyes. The tablet slipped from Min-Jun's fingers, clattering against the floor with a sound like thunder in the quiet corridor. Camila's head snapped toward him. For a moment, one infinite, devastating moment, their eyes met, and Min-Jun watched an entire spectrum of emotions flash across her face, shock, fear, anger, and something that looked dangerously close to the love he'd thrown away. Then her expression shuddered, transforming into something cold and protective. Camila, he whispered, his voice foreign to his own ears. She said nothing. Instead, she turned her back to him and walked into the hospital room, the door closing between them with the finality of a judge's gavel. Min-Jun stood there, paralyzed, his mind racing through calculations that suddenly seemed absurd. 2 years since she'd left Seoul. The boy appeared to be around 2 years old. 6 weeks. She'd said she was 6 weeks pregnant during their last argument. No, she hadn't said that. She'd looked pale, exhausted, but he'd attributed it to their crumbling relationship. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant, wedding venue final walkthrough tomorrow. Your grandmother expects you at dinner tonight. The wedding. Seo-Yun. His family. The empire he was supposed to inherit, the legacy he was supposed to preserve. And on the other side of that door, a son he never knew existed and the only woman who'd ever made him want to burn his entire world down just to make her smile. Have you ever wondered what you would sacrifice for a second chance at the one thing you thought you'd lost forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you would do in Min-Jun's shoes. Min-Jun didn't remember deciding to move. One moment he was standing in the corridor, the next his hand was on the door handle. The room was small, painted in that particular shade of hospital beige that was supposed to be calming but only succeeded in feeling institutional. Camila sat in a chair beside a hospital crib, her hand through the bars, gently stroking Kai's arm. The boy was asleep now, his breathing assisted by a thin oxygen cannula, but even in sleep, he looked so much like Min-Jun that it hurt. "You need to leave." Camila's voice was low, controlled, and absolutely lethal. "Camila, You don't get to Camila me. You don't get to show up here, in this hospital room, and act like you have any right to be here." Her hand never left their son's arm, but her whole body vibrated with suppressed fury. "Leave. Now." Min-Jun closed the door behind him instead. "Is he mine?" The laugh that escaped her was bitter, broken. "Are you seriously asking me that? Look at him, Min-Jun, look at him and tell me you have any doubt." He looked. God, he looked. And in looking, he saw every moment he'd missed. First steps. First words. First everything. "Why didn't you tell me?" Now she did turn to face him, and the expression on her face could have frozen the sun. "Tell you? I tried to tell you. I came to your office that last day, Min-Jun. I was going to tell you everything. But your assistant informed me you were unavailable, because you were in a meeting with your grandmother. The same grandmother who'd been sending me doctored photos and fake emails for weeks." She stood, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "And when I finally cornered you at your penthouse, you looked at me like I was a problem you needed to solve. You didn't fight for me. You didn't choose me. So no, I didn't tell you. Because you'd already made your choice." The words hit him like physical blows. "I didn't know about the photos. The emails. I thought. You thought I was crazy. Paranoid. Looking for excuses to make demands on your precious family legacy." Her voice cracked. "I loved you, Min-Jun. I loved you enough to walk away when you wouldn't stand up for us. I'm standing now. Too late." She moved back to Kai's bedside, her walls firmly back in place. "You have 20 seconds to leave before I call security. I'm sure that would make interesting news for your wedding. When is it again? I saw the announcement online. 3 weeks. 4. 28 days, he said automatically, then wanted to kick himself. Something flickered in her eyes, pain, maybe, or vindication. "Congratulations. I hope she gives you everything your grandmother wants. Now get out." Min-Jun looked at his son, and then at the woman he'd never stopped loving, despite all his efforts to convince himself otherwise. Every rational bone in his body screamed at him to walk away, to protect the life he'd built, the empire he was supposed to inherit. But he'd been rational before. Rational had cost him everything that mattered. "No," he said quietly. "Excuse me. I said no. I'm not leaving." He pulled the visitor's chair closer and sat down with all the finality of a man planting a flag. "That's my son in that hospital bed. And you were," he swallowed hard, "you are the woman I loved enough to betray every expectation my family ever had of me. So no, Camila. I'm not leaving. Not until we talk. Really talk." She stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." He pulled out his phone and, before he could second-guess himself, typed out a message to his assistant, "Cancel tomorrow's walkthrough. Actually, clear my schedule for the week." Camila watched him with something that might have been grudging respect if it weren't wrapped in so much anger. "You think one dramatic gesture fixes 2 years of silence? 1 week makes up for every birthday, every sleepless night, every time your son asked why he didn't have a daddy like other kids." Each word was a knife, precisely aimed. Min-Jun took them all. "No," he admitted. "Nothing fixes that. But I can start trying. If you'll let me." The monitor beside Kai's bed beeped softly, a steady rhythm that filled the silence between them. Camila looked at their son, then back at Min-Jun, and he could see the war playing out behind her eyes. Finally, she sank back into her chair, exhaustion written in every line of her body. He has your stubbornness too, you know. Once Kai decides something, there's no talking him out of it. It wasn't accepted. But it wasn't rejection either. Min-Jun would take it. The first hour passed in excruciating silence. Min-Jun watched Camila watch their son, memorizing the way her fingers traced absent patterns on Kai's small arm, the way she bit her lower lip when the monitor's rhythm changed even slightly. She'd always done that when she was worried, bitten her lip until he'd kissed the habit away. That version of them felt like archaeological history now. Respiratory syncytial virus, Camila said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. RSV. Common in toddlers, but Kai's hit him hard. 3 days of fever. I thought it was just a cold until he started wheezing. Min-Jun's hands clenched on the armrests. Is he going to be okay? The doctors say yes. With treatment. Which costs, she cut herself off, shaking her head. He'll be fine. But Min-Jun had spent his entire life reading between lines in corporate boardrooms. Which costs money you don't have. Her spine stiffened. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling my personal physician. He has connections at. Put that away. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. We don't need your money, Min-Jun. We've managed fine without you. He looked around the room, at her worn sneakers, the frayed edges of her sweater, the single small bag of belongings she'd brought. Fine was a generous description. Fine was also a lie they were both pretending to believe. This isn't about pride, Camila. This is about Kai getting the best care. Everything is about pride with people like you. She finally met his eyes fully, and the exhaustion there hit him like a freight train. You think money solves everything. That you can just swoop in, write a check, and suddenly you're father of the year. That's not what Isn't it? She stood abruptly, pacing the small room like a caged animal. You want to know what the last 2 years have been like? I'll tell you. I've worked 3 freelance consulting jobs at once while pregnant because American healthcare is a nightmare. I gave birth alone because my mother was deployed overseas and I'd burned every bridge in Seoul trying to be with you. I've sung Kai to sleep every single night, changed my diaper, and celebrated every milestone by myself. Her voice cracked. So forgive me if I'm not jumping at the chance to let you play hero now that it's convenient. The words hung in the air, sharp and true. Min-Jun felt each one lodge somewhere beneath his ribs. You're right, he said quietly. She blinked. What? You're right. About all of it. He stood, keeping his distance, respecting the space she needed. I can't fix 2 years with money. I can't erase the fact that I was a coward who chose duty over love. But Camila, I'm not trying to play the hero. I'm trying to be what I should have been from the beginning, his father. Your partner. I don't need a partner. That position's been closed for 2 years. Then what do you need? The question came out rawer than he intended. Tell me. Please. Camila looked at him for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. The anger didn't disappear, but it made room for something more complicated, grief, maybe, for what they'd lost. I need you to understand that you don't get to just walk back into our lives because fate threw us in the same hospital, she said. I need you to understand that Kai is my son first. I've earned that right through every sleepless night, every worry, every moment of joy you weren't there for. I understand. Do you? She moved back to Kai's bedside, her hand automatically finding his. Because the Min-Jun I knew would already be calculating how this affects his family empire. How to spin it. How to manage the scandal. He wanted to deny it. Wanted to pretend the thought hadn't crossed his mind during that first shocked moment in the corridor. But she deserved honesty, even when it damned him. You're right again, he admitted. That thought did cross my mind. For about 30 seconds. Then I looked at him, really looked, and nothing else mattered. He took a breath. My grandmother will be furious. Seo-Yun will probably sue for breach of contract. The board will question my judgment. I don't care, Camila. I stopped caring the moment I saw my son. She studied him with those sharp eyes that had always seen through his corporate armor. Pretty words. But you said pretty words before too. Right before you let me walk away. I know. He moved closer, just one step. So let me prove it. Not with words. With action. With time. Let me be here, at least while Kai's in the hospital. Let me start learning how to be his father. Camila turned back to Kai, silent for so long that Min-Jun thought she'd refuse. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. You can stay. For now. But Min-Jun? The second you hurt him, the second you make him feel like he's not enough, you're gone. Understood? Understood. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a chance. Dawn crept through the hospital blinds like an unwelcome guest. Min-Jun had spent the night in that uncomfortable chair, watching Kai's chest rise and fall, occasionally catching Camila's eyes across the dim room. She dozed fitfully, her head tilted at an angle that would leave her neck screaming, but every time Kai stirred, she was instantly alert. This was love, Min-Jun realized. Not the champagne and roses version he'd given her in Seoul. This was the unglamorous, bone-deep kind that showed up at 3 in the morning when your child couldn't breathe properly. He'd missed all of it. The door opened, and a nurse entered with practiced quietness. Good morning. Kai's numbers are looking better. The doctor will be on rounds in about an hour. She glanced at Min-Jun, then at Camila, clearly trying to puzzle out their relationship. Dad can stay, but we'll need to update our records if... He's not, Camila started. I'm his father, Min-Jun said simultaneously. The nurse's eyebrows rose slightly, but her professionalism won out. I'll bring the paperwork. After she left, Camila turned to him with barely controlled fury. You can't just claim him like that. He is mine. Biologically, yes. But fatherhood isn't about DNA, Min-Jun. It's about, she stopped as Kai's eyes fluttered open, his small face scrunching in confusion at the unfamiliar surroundings. Mama? His voice was hoarse, frightened. Camila was at his side instantly, her anger evaporating into tender reassurance. I'm right here, baby. Mama's here. You're okay. Min-Jun watched his son properly awake for the first time. Kai's eyes, his eyes, were wide and dark, scanning the room until they landed on Min-Jun. The boy stared at him with the unfiltered curiosity of toddlers everywhere. Who dat? Kai pointed a small finger at him. Camila's jaw tightened. Min-Jun could see her weighing options, deciding how much truth a 2-year-old could handle. The answer she chose cut deeper than any of her angry words had. That's Mama's friend. His name is Min-Jun. Friend. Not father. Not daddy. A friend. Kai seemed satisfied with this explanation and promptly declared he was hungry. As Camila fussed with his blankets and called for the nurse, Min-Jun's phone buzzed. Then buzzed again. And again. His grandmother's name flashed across the screen like a warning siren. He stepped into the corridor to answer. Grandmother. Where are you? Her voice could have frozen the Han River in July. Your assistant said you canceled the venue walkthrough. The florist has been trying to reach you. Seo-Yun's mother is asking questions. I'm in Atlanta. Something came up. Atlanta? What could possibly be more important than your wedding preparations? Min-Jun closed his eyes. I found her. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, the foreign woman. He hated that phrase. Hated how his grandmother wielded it like a weapon. Her name is Camila. And yes. I see. 2 words packed with dynasties of disappointment. And have you come to your senses, or do I need to remind you what's at stake? There's a child, grandmother. Another silence, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully modulated. I assume you've confirmed paternity? I don't need a test. He's mine. Nevertheless, you will have one done. Discreetly. She continued as if he hadn't spoken. This complicates things, but it's not insurmountable. We can arrange support payments through a trust. Confidentiality agreements. The child will want for nothing, and your wedding can proceed as planned. Something inside Min-Jun snapped. Maybe it was watching Camila cradle their feverish son all night. Maybe it was seeing how Kai had looked at him, not with recognition, but with the polite interest reserved for strangers. No. Excuse me. I said no. I'm not signing him away with a trust fund and a non-disclosure agreement. He's my son, grandmother. Your great-grandson. He is a complication born from your youthful indiscretion with an unsuitable woman. Her voice hardened to diamond. You will handle this appropriately, Min-Jun, or you will lose everything. The company. Your position. Your inheritance. All of it. Then I lose it. He heard her sharp intake of breath. You would throw away 5 generations of legacy for my son. Yes. For Camila. Yes. I should have done it 2 years ago. If you cancel this wedding, you are dead to this family. The ultimatum hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Min-Jun thought of Seo-Yun, who he didn't love but didn't hate. Of his parents, caught between their domineering matriarch and their only son. Of the empire he'd been groomed to inherit since he could walk. Then he thought of Kai's small hand gripping Camila's finger. Of the life he could have, should have, been part of from the beginning. I can live with that, he said quietly. Can you? He ended the call before she could respond, his hand shaking as he lowered the phone. Through the window in the door, he could see Camila feeding Kai small spoonfuls of applesauce, her whole world contained in that simple act. He'd just blown up his entire life. And somehow, it felt like the first honest thing he'd done in years. Min-Jun stood in the corridor for a full minute, staring at his phone like it might offer some reassurance that he hadn't just committed professional suicide. It didn't. Instead, it buzzed with a text from his father. Your grandmother called. Think carefully about what you're doing. Too late for that. When he returned to the room, Camila took one look at his face and stiffened. What happened? Nothing that matters. He tried for a smile. It felt like broken glass on his lips. Don't. She stood, careful not to jostle Kai, who was now absorbed in a cartoon on the wall-mounted television. Don't do that corporate stonewalling thing with me. I lived through 2 years of it, remember? Fair point. Min-Jun ran a hand through his hair, suddenly exhausted. My grandmother knows. About Kai. About us. And she gave me an ultimatum. Cancel the wedding and lose everything, or proceed as planned and manage you and Kai like a quarterly liability. Camila's laugh was acidic. Manage us. Of course. What did you tell her? That I'd rather lose the empire. The words landed between them like a grenade. Camila's expression cycled through disbelief, suspicion, and something that might have been hope before settling on anger. You idiot. She moved past him to close the room door, her voice dropping to a furious whisper. You absolute idiot. I thought you'd be. What? Happy? Grateful? She wheeled on him. You just made a decision that affects all of us without consulting me. Again. Do you see the pattern here, Min-Jun? He blinked, genuinely confused. I'm choosing you. Choosing Kai. How is that? Because I never asked you to burn your life down. Her hands gestured wildly. I asked you to fight for us 2 years ago. Not to self-destruct now out of guilt. There's a difference. This isn't guilt. It's a grand gesture. Camila paced the small space like a prosecuting attorney. It's the same impulsive romanticism that had you booking last-minute trips to Jeju and buying me vintage first editions I mentioned once in passing. It feels good at the moment, Min-Jun, but what happens in 6 months? A year? When the novelty wears off and you realize what you gave up. The accusation stung because it held a kernel of truth. He had been impulsive with her. Extravagant. Operating on feeling rather than strategy for the first time in his carefully calculated life. That's not what this is, he said quietly. Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, you just nuked your entire world without thinking about the fallout. What happens when your family cuts you off? When you can't afford your lifestyle? Will you resent us then? I would never. You already did. The words exploded from her. You resented me 2 years ago, Min-Jun. Maybe you didn't realize it, but I saw it. Every time your grandmother called. Every time you had to explain to me at business dinners. I became a burden you carried instead of a partner you chose. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. I learned that when I was 6 weeks pregnant, standing in your penthouse, you couldn't even look me in the eye. Her voice cracked. I learned it every time Kai asked about his daddy and I had to invent reasons why some kids have them and he doesn't. Min-Jun felt something inside him fracture. I'm trying to fix that. You can't fix the past. You can only. She stopped as Kai called out. Mama, why are you sad? Camila's entire demeanor shifted, that maternal mask sliding back into place with practiced ease. I'm not sad, baby. Mama's just tired. She moved back to his bedside, smoothing his curls with infinite gentleness. Kai looked past her to Min-Jun. Mama's friend makes you sad. The question was so innocent, so perceptive, that Min-Jun felt his throat tighten. This was what he'd missed. These moments. The way Kai already understood his mother's emotions, already tried to protect her. No, sweetheart, Camila said softly. Grown-ups just have complicated talks sometimes. Oh. Kai seemed satisfied. Then, with the mercurial attention of toddlers, can I have more juice? As Camila dealt with juice boxes and straws, the doctor arrived for rounds. She examined Kai with efficient kindness, asked questions about his breathing, his appetite, and his energy levels. Min-Jun stood uselessly in the corner, a spectator in his own son's life. I think we can discharge him tomorrow if tonight goes well, the doctor said finally. But he'll need follow-up appointments. Breathing treatments at home. And someone to monitor him closely for the next week. I can do that, Camila said immediately. Do you have help? Support system? Camila's jaw set. I'll manage. The doctor's eyes flicked to Min-Jun, a question in them. He opened his mouth to offer, but Camila cut him off with a look that could have melted steel. After the doctor left, silence settled over them like nuclear fallout. Let me help, Min-Jun said finally. Please. Camila didn't answer. She just turned back to Kai, her walls higher than ever. And Min-Jun realized that destroying his old life might have been the easy part. Building a new one. That would require something he'd never quite mastered, patience. The rest of that day passed in a strange limbo. Kai's condition continued to improve, his breathing easier, his color better. But the atmosphere in the room remained thick with unresolved tension. Min-Jun occupied his corner like a ghost haunting his own life, watching Camila read stories and play simple games with their son, learning the rhythms of a relationship he'd never been part of. By evening, his phone had become a weapon of mass destruction. 17 missed calls from his grandmother. 9 from his father. 5 from Seo-Yun. And 1 long text from his assistant that essentially translated to, "The world is ending, please advise." He ignored them all. You should answer those, Camila said without looking up from the puzzle she was helping Kai assemble on the hospital tray. Ignoring your problems won't make them disappear. Trust me, I tried. They can wait. Can they? Now she did look at him, and her expression was complicated. Min-Jun, I meant what I said earlier. I never asked you to blow up your life. If you need to go back to Seoul, handle your business, do damage control. Is that what you want? For me to leave? The question hung there. Kai looked between them with that unsettling toddler intuition that saw too much. Mama, why Mama's friends stay here so long? Camila's face softened. He's just making sure you're feeling better, baby. Oh. Kai considered this, then turned to Min-Jun with the blunt honesty of children everywhere. You nice. You have sad eyes like Mama sometimes. The observation landed like a punch. Min-Jun had spent his entire adult life perfecting an impassive corporate mask, and a 2-year-old had seen through it in hours. Kai, that's, Camila started. He's right, Min-Jun said quietly. He moved closer, kneeling beside the bed so he was at Kai's eye level. I do have sad eyes. Because I made mistakes that hurt people I care about. But I'm trying to fix them. Kai tilted his head, processing this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Mama says mistakes okay if you say sorry and do better. Your mama is very wise. She the bestest. Kai's declaration was absolute, brooking no argument. The best, Camila corrected automatically, but Min-Jun saw her eyes glisten. A nurse interrupted to check vitals and adjust Kai's 4 fluids. While Camila consulted with her about discharge procedures, Min-Jun's phone rang again. His father this time. He stepped into the corridor, some instinct telling him this call he couldn't ignore. Father. Your grandmother has scheduled an emergency board meeting. His father's voice was tight, controlled. She's pushing to remove you as heir. Claims you're emotionally compromised and unfit for leadership. Min-Jun leaned against the wall, suddenly dizzy. She's moving fast. She always does when challenged. Min-Jun, I need you to understand what's happening. If she succeeds, and she might, you lose everything. Not just the CEO position. Your board seat. Your shares. The legal team is already drafting documents to reclassify you as a minority stakeholder. I see. That's it. I see. His father's composure cracked. Do you understand what you're throwing away? 5 generations of. I know what I'm throwing away. Min-Jun watched through the window as Camila adjusted Kai's blanket, her movements tender and practiced. I also know what I'd be throwing away if I got on a plane back to Seoul right now. His father was quiet for a long moment. Is she worth it? This woman. Her name is Camila. And yes. She's worth everything. Min-Jun paused. So is my son. Your son. His father's voice changed, became something softer, more human. I have a grandson. You do. His name is Kai. He's 2 years old, brilliant, and has better emotional intelligence than half our board of directors. A sound that might have been a laugh. Like his mother, I assume. Like both his parents, I hope. Another silence. Then, your grandmother will never accept this. You know that. I know. And Camila? Does she accept it? Accept you? Min-Jun looked through the window again. Camila had caught him staring and quickly looked away, but not before he saw the confusion in her eyes. She didn't trust him yet. Maybe she never would. No, he admitted. She doesn't. I hurt her too badly 2 years ago. But I'm going to try anyway. Min-Jun. His father's voice carried a weight Min-Jun had never heard before. I've spent my entire life doing what was expected of me. Marrying the right woman, building the right alliances, making the right choices for the family. I don't regret it. But I do wonder, sometimes, what my life might have looked like if I'd been brave enough to choose differently. Father. Fight for her. For your son. But be smart about it. Your grandmother will use every weapon at her disposal. He paused. I'll do what I can to delay the board meeting. Buy you some time. But Min-Jun, you'll need a plan. Grand gestures won't be enough. The call ended before Min-Jun could respond. He stood in the corridor, his reflection ghostly in the darkened window, and wondered if being brave and being smart were mutually exclusive. Inside, Kai laughed at something Camila said, the sound pure and uncomplicated. Min-Jun had 28 days until his wedding. Time to figure out who he wanted to be when he grew up. Kai was discharged the following afternoon with a bag full of medications and strict instructions for follow-up care. Min-Jun watched Camila navigate the paperwork with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before: insurance forms, prescription authorizations, appointment scheduling. She moved through it all with grim determination, and when the billing department mentioned the outstanding balance, her jaw tightened imperceptibly. I can set up a payment plan, she said, her voice steady despite the astronomical figure on the screen. It's already been handled, the administrator said, glancing at her computer with confusion. It shows here that everything's been paid in full. Just this morning. Camila turned slowly to look at Min-Jun. If looks could kill, he'd be a corpse. Outside. Now, she said through gritted teeth. They left Kai with a nurse who was delighted to read him one more story. In the corridor, Camila rounded on him with barely controlled fury. I specifically told you that you didn't need my money. I know. Min-Jun held up his hands. But this isn't about you, Camila. It's about Kai getting the care he needs without you drowning in medical debt. It's not your decision to make. He's my son. The words echoed down the hallway. A passing orderly pretended not to hear. Camila's voice dropped to something more dangerous than shouting. You want to be his father? Fine. But being a parent isn't about grand gestures and checkbooks. It's about showing up. It's about asking permission instead of bulldozing over boundaries because you think you know better. I'm trying to help. No, you're trying to fix things. There's a difference. She crossed her arms. You want to know what I need? I need to know you'll still be here in 6 months when the novelty wears off. I need to know you won't resent us when your grandmother finally cuts you off completely. I need to know that you're not just playing house until the guilt subsides. That's not what this is. Then what is it, Min-Jun? Her eyes searched his face. Because from where I'm standing, you've made a series of impulsive decisions without thinking about the long-term consequences. Just like you did when we first got together. Just like you did when you let me walk away. The accusation stung because it held the truth. He had been impulsive with her, operating on feeling rather than strategy. You're right, he said quietly. I didn't think about the medical bills from your perspective. I should have asked. I'm sorry. She blinked, clearly not expecting the apology. Oh. But Camila, I need you to understand something. He took a careful step closer. I'm not playing house. I'm not chasing novelty. I'm trying to be the man I should have been 2 years ago. And yes, I'm going to make mistakes. Probably a lot of them. But I'm here. I'm staying. Whether you believe me or not. For how long? Until your grandmother offers you a way back in. She already did. I turned her down. Camila studied him for a long moment. You're serious about this? About throwing everything away? I'm serious about building something new. With you and Kai. If you'll let me. Before she could respond, Kai's voice called from the room. Mama. The nurse lady says we can go home now. Home. The word hit Min-Jun with unexpected force. He didn't know where Camila lived, what their apartment looked like, what their daily routine was. He was a stranger to his own son's life. Camila saw the realization on his face. Her expression softened fractionally. He lives in a one-bedroom apartment in East Atlanta. I sleep on the couch. We eat a lot of pasta because it's cheap and he'll actually eat it. His favorite color is blue, he's terrified of the vacuum cleaner, and he can recite the entire plot of his favorite cartoon even though he can't quite pronounce half the words yet. Each detail was a gift, a small window into the life he'd missed. Thank you, he said hoarsely. Don't thank me yet. She moved toward the room, then paused. The doctor said Kai needs to be monitored closely for a week. I have 3 consulting deadlines I've already pushed. My mother won't be back from deployment for another month. Let me help. Min-Jun. Not with money. With time. Let me stay in Atlanta. Let me learn how to be his father. Teach me his routine, his favorite foods, his fears. Let me prove I'm not going anywhere. Camila looked at him for what felt like an eternity. He could see the war playing out behind her eyes, fear battling hope, anger wrestling with exhaustion. 1 week, she said finally. You can stay for 1 week. Help with Kai's care. But Min-Jun? You sleep on a hotel bed, not my couch. And the second you make this harder instead of easier, you're gone. Deal. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even really trusted. But it was a door, cracked open just enough for light to slip through. Min-Jun would take it. Min-Jun discovered that being a father was nothing like running a multinational corporation. In boardrooms, he commanded attention, made decisive calls, and people executed his vision without question. 2-year-olds, apparently, had never received that memo. No. Kai declared, crossing his tiny arms with absolute authority. No medicine. It was day 3 of Min-Jun's crash course in fatherhood, and he was failing spectacularly. Camila had left for a video conference with a client, trusting him, against what was clearly her better judgment, to administer Kai's afternoon breathing treatment. The nebulizer sat on the coffee table like an instrument of torture. Kai regarded it with the suspicion of a seasoned negotiator spotting a bad deal. Kai, the doctor said you need this to help you breathe better, Min-Jun tried, using his most reasonable boardroom voice. No thank you. Kai's politeness somehow made it worse. Min-Jun looked around the small apartment, searching for inspiration. The space was modest but warm, children's books stacked in creative towers, Kai's artwork taped to the refrigerator, photographs documenting milestones Min-Jun had missed. On the kitchen counter, he spotted a toy dinosaur. What if the dinosaur needs the medicine too? Min-Jun picked up the plastic T-Rex. He's been feeling sick, and he needs a brave friend to show him it's not scary. Kai's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Dinosaurs don't get sick. This one does. He's very sick. Probably has the same thing you had. RSV. Min-Jun blinked. His 2-year-old son knew medical terminology. Of course he did. Camila would have explained everything in age-appropriate terms because she was that kind of mother. Exactly. RSV. Very serious. He needs medicine, but he's scared. Can you show him how brave kids do it? Kai considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court deliberation. Finally, okay. But after, we play blocks. Deal. The treatment took 15 minutes. Kai held the dinosaur in one hand and the nebulizer mask in the other, alternating between himself and the toy. Min-Jun sat beside him on the worn couch, reading stories in funny voices that made Kai giggle between breaths. When Camila emerged from her makeshift office, really just the bedroom with the door closed, she found them building an elaborate block tower, Kai chattering about his dinosaur's miraculous recovery. Medicine time went okay? She asked, surprise evident in her voice. We negotiated terms. Min-Jun carefully placed another block on their increasingly precarious structure. The dinosaur and I formed an alliance. Something flickered across Camila's face, amusement, maybe, or reluctant respect. Smart. He responds better to stories than commands. I'm learning. Min-Jun watched Kai meticulously select the next block. He's brilliant, Camila. The way his mind works. He gets that from you. The admission seemed to slip out unintended. That analytical thing. He sorts his toys by color and size. Makes patterns out of everything. Before Min-Jun could respond, his phone buzzed. Another call from Seoul. He'd been getting them hourly for 3 days, his grandmother, the board members she'd rallied, even Seo-Yun's father threatening breach of contract lawsuits. He declined the call. You can't avoid them forever, Camila said quietly. I'm not avoiding. I'm prioritizing. He turned back to Kai. Okay, buddy, where does this one go? But Camila wasn't letting it drop. Min-Jun, I've been thinking. About what you said. About building something new. Her tone made him look up. And I don't think you fully processed what you're giving up. Not really. She sat in the armchair across from them, her hands clasped in her lap. You grew up in that world. Your entire identity is wrapped up in Park Industries. In being the heir. The chosen one. I was also the guy who let the woman he loved walk away. That was part of my identity too. But you can't build a new identity just on guilt and good intentions. Kai's tower collapsed with a crash, blocks scattering across the floor. He looked at the ruins with philosophical acceptance. That's okay. We build again. The simple declaration hung in the air, weighted with more meaning than a toddler could possibly intend. Min-Jun started gathering blocks. You think I'll regret this? That I'll wake up one day and resent what I gave up? I think, Camila paused, choosing her words carefully. I think you're in crisis mode right now. Running on adrenaline and emotion. And when that fades, when reality sets in, I need to know you won't blame us for it. Tower. Kai demanded, handing Min-Jun a block. Bigger tower. As Min-Jun helped his son build again, he thought about what Camila was really asking. Not whether he loved them, that was obvious. But whether he could love this life. This simple, ordinary, unglamorous life of breathing treatments and block towers and one-bedroom apartments. I spent 2 years trying to convince myself I made the right choice, he said finally. 2 years in boardrooms and strategic meetings and an engagement that felt like a business merger. And I was miserable, Camila. Maybe I didn't realize it then, but I was. This? He gestured at the scattered blocks, at Kai's concentrated face, at the tiny apartment that somehow felt more like home than his Seoul penthouse ever had. This isn't what I'm giving up everything for. This is what I'm finally choosing. What would you sacrifice for a chance to be the person you were always meant to be? Let us know in the comments. Camila looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then Kai's tower collapsed again, and they both reached to help him rebuild. Day 6 arrived with an unwelcome visitor. Min-Jun was attempting to make breakfast, which, he'd learned, meant convincing Kai that eggs weren't poison while Camila showered, when someone knocked. He opened the door to find his father standing in the hallway, looking profoundly out of place in his bespoke suit amidst the modest apartment complex. Father. Min-Jun's hand tightened on the doorknob. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? His father's eyes moved past him, taking in the cramped space, the mismatched furniture, the chaos of toddler life. May I come in? Before Min-Jun could answer, Kai appeared at his knee, curious. Who dat? Min-Jun looked down at his son, then back at his father. 2 generations meeting across an impossible divide. Kai, this is my father. Your grandfather. The words felt monumental. His father's expression cracked, just for a moment. He crouched down, bringing himself to Kai's level with surprising grace. Hello, Kai. I've heard a lot about you. You have a funny voice, Kai declared with brutal toddler honesty. A sound escaped his father that might have been a laugh. I suppose I do. I'm from Korea. Korea far away. Very far. You live there? I do. Kai processed this with his characteristic seriousness. That's sad. You miss lots of stuff. The innocence of the statement hit harder than any accusation. His father straightened slowly, and when he met Min-Jun's eyes, there was something vulnerable in them. Yes, he said quietly. I suppose I do. Camila emerged from the bathroom, froze when she saw the stranger in her living room, then immediately moved to stand beside Kai. Who? Park Jae-sung, Min-Jun's father introduced himself with a slight bow. Min-Jun's father. I apologize for the intrusion. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Camila's hand found Kai's shoulder, protective and possessive. Kai, sweetie, why don't you go play with your trucks in the bedroom for a few minutes, she said, her voice carefully controlled. But Mama. Now, please. Something in her tone brooked no argument. Kai went, but not without a backward glance at the grandfather he'd just met. Once the bedroom door closed, Camila turned to Min-Jun's father with the full force of her protective fury. If you're here to threaten us. I'm not. He held up his hands, a gesture of peace. I'm here because I needed to see for myself. To understand what my son was willing to lose everything for. And? Min-Jun asked, his voice tight. His father looked around the apartment again, really looked. At the medical supplies still organized on the counter. At Kai's artwork on the walls. At the photographs documenting a life his family had never been part of. Your grandmother is moving forward with the board meeting. Day after tomorrow. She has the votes to remove you as heir, reclassify your shares, essentially exile you from the family business. He paused. She's also threatened legal action against Miss Johnson if you don't return and honor your commitment to Seo-Yun. Camila's face went pale. She can't. She can try. International parental custody disputes, allegations of entrapment, character assassination. His father's voice was clinical, but his eyes were troubled. She's prepared to make your lives very difficult. Then I'll fight her. Min-Jun moved closer to Camila, a united front. In court if necessary. With what resources? Once she cuts you off, your accounts will be frozen. Your credit lines cancelled. You'll be fighting one of Korea's most powerful families with nothing but principle. His father's gaze was unflinching. I admire the sentiment, Min-Jun, but reality is less romantic than your grand gesture. So what? I should just give up. Go back and marry Seo-Yun and pretend my son doesn't exist. No. The single word hung in the air. I think you should fight smart instead of fighting recklessly. Camila stepped forward. What exactly are you proposing? His father reached into his briefcase, pulled out a folder. I've been consulting with attorneys. There are ways to protect you, Miss Johnson. Trust funds established in Kai's name that your grandmother can't touch. Legal protections against harassment. But Min-Jun would need to return to Seoul. Temporarily. Face the board. Show that he's not abandoning his responsibilities but rather redefining them. Redefining. Min-Jun laughed bitterly. You mean compromising. I mean surviving. His father's voice sharpened. Your grandmother is counting on you being impulsive. Counting on you to burn everything down in a fit of emotion. Don't give her that satisfaction. Come back. Fight from the inside. Show the board that you can honor your family obligations while also being a father to your son. And Camila? Min-Jun asked. Where does she fit in this neat little plan? His father turned to her, and something like respect flickered in his expression. That, I imagine, is up to her. All eyes turned to Camila. She stood there, Kai's muffled playing sounds filtering from the bedroom, her whole world hanging in the balance. I need to think, she said finally. I need time. You have until tomorrow morning. His father moved toward the door. The flight to Seoul leaves at noon. After that, your grandmother's lawyers file their paperwork. He paused at the threshold, looking back at Kai's closed bedroom door. He has your mother's eyes, Min-Jun. She would have loved him. Then he was gone, leaving behind a folder of legal documents and an impossible choice. That night, after Kai had been read 3 stories, given 2 glasses of water, and finally surrendered to sleep, Min-Jun and Camila sat on opposite ends of her worn couch. The legal documents lay on the coffee table between them like a minefield. Your father seems different than I expected, Camila said finally. He's a politician in a suit. Don't let the warm grandfather fool you. I don't think it was an act. She pulled her knees to her chest, making herself smaller. He looked at Kai the way you do. Like he was seeing a miracle. Min-Jun wanted to argue, but couldn't. His father had looked at Kai with something like wonder. Like regret. Like all the years he'd spent prioritizing duty over connection had suddenly crystallized into a single moment of clarity. He's right about one thing, Camila continued. Your grandmother will destroy us if she feels threatened. I've seen what people like her can do. I lived there 2 years ago. So what? I just go back. Play the dutiful heir. Marry Seo-yeon and visit you and Kai on holidays like some. He couldn't even finish the sentence. No. God, no. Camila turned to face him fully. But Min-Jun, fighting her head-on with no resources, no plan, no backup. That's not bravery. That's suicide. And when you lose, because you will lose, where does that leave Kai? Where does that leave us? You sound like you want me to go. I sound like someone who's been thinking about the future instead of just reacting to the present. Her voice was sharp, but underneath it, he heard fear. I've spent 2 years building a life for Kai without help. I can keep doing it. But if we're going to do this, really do this, together, then we need to be smart about it. Min-Jun stood, too agitated to sit still. Define smart. You go back. Face the board. But not to capitulate, to negotiate. You're the heir, Min-Jun. You have leverage even if you don't feel like you do. Use it. And Seo-yeon? You end it. Properly. Not by ghosting from Atlanta but by facing her directly and ending it with the respect she deserves. Camila's eyes were fierce. You want to prove you're not the same man who let me walk away. Start by not doing to her what you did to me. The comparison stung because it was accurate. He had let Camila walk away. Had hidden behind silence instead of fighting. What if I can't win? What if my grandmother gets everything she wants? Then you come back here. And we figure it out together. But at least you'll have tried. At least you'll have done it the right way instead of burning everything down and hoping the ashes form something beautiful. Min-Jun moved to the window, looking out at the Atlanta night. Behind him, he could hear Camila shifting, the couch creaking. I'm terrified, he admitted quietly. Terrified that if I leave, I'll lose you. Lose him. Lose this fragile thing we're building. Join the club. Camila came to stand beside him. I've been terrified for 2 years. Terrified of failing Kai. Terrified of you showing up and disrupting everything. Terrified of you never showing up at all. She took a breath. But fear can't be what drives us, Min-Jun. Not anymore. He turned to face her. They were close now, closer than they'd been since that last night in Seoul. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the worry lines that hadn't been there 2 years ago, the weight of single motherhood carved into her features. I love you, he said. I never stopped. Even when I convinced myself I had. Her eyes filled. That's not fair. I know. Nothing about this is fair. But it's true. Min-Jun. I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I needed you to know. Before I leave. If I leave. Camila wiped her eyes roughly. You're leaving. Tomorrow. On that plane. Because you're going to be brave and smart this time. And you're going to fight for our son the right way. And you? What are you fighting for? She looked at him for a long moment, her expression impossibly complex. A future where Kai doesn't have to choose between his father and his mother. Where he grows up knowing he's loved by both of us. Maybe someday, we figure out how to be a family instead of two people sharing custody of a tragedy. That's what I'm fighting for too. Then go. Do it right. And Min-Jun. She placed her hand over his heart, just for a moment. Come back. Because if you don't, I will hunt you down. And this time, I won't be the one walking away. It wasn't a declaration of love. But it was a promise. And for now, that was enough. The next morning, Min-Jun knelt beside Kai's bed. His son was barely awake, clutching his dinosaur, confusion evident on his small face. I have to go away for a little while, Min-Jun said, his voice thick. But I promise I'm coming back. To you. To your mama. I promise. Kai studied him with those two knowing eyes. You promise? I promise. Okay. Kai held out his dinosaur. He keeps you safe. He is very brave. Min-Jun took the plastic toy, his throat too tight for words. He kissed his son's forehead, memorizing the moment. At the door, Camila waited. They didn't hug. Didn't kiss. Just looked at each other across 2 years of damage and 1 week of tentative healing. 14 days, she said. You have 14 days to sort this out. After that, I'm done waiting. 14 days. He nodded. I'll make it 12. The taxi was waiting. Min-Jun got in, the dinosaur clutched in his hand, and didn't look back. He couldn't. Because if he did, he might never leave. And leaving, this time, was what love looked like.